Guests, call-in listeners, or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions
Guess what? It's Plato's Cave time with David Meckie. Sadly, Meckie is still not very well. Well, he's not very well. He's just not well. And he'll be joining us after a small break to get better. You know how it is when you're not feeling well? When your aches and pains and fevers and all of those things, coughing. That takes me back to 2020. But anyway, let me start by saying good morning. Good morning, and good morning to you in the chat room. I can see aliens falling from the sky in chat room. I want to say hello to Sergeant Miller. Good morning to you. Flippy killed Rev Radio. Mountain Devil. Lots of memes going on there. Batsman, Jim Jones, and Jer, all in the chat room, all having great discussions. And this is the magic. It's the magic now of modern day radio. Did you know that? Oh, I could even got my screen up. Because if you have modern radio, you have a chat room that your people can join. And I'm going to say I'm broadcasting. You might detect this anyway from the accent, or you've been with the station for 14 years. But I'm broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio. My notes are on that screen over here. That is home to fresh ideas. Revolution.radio. Go there, jump into the chat room, buy some merchandise, and look, we're going to ask if you can donate. That'd be fantastic. If you can't, we understand. Times are tough. Times are tough are all over, says Meckie in the opening. When he does it, you can join us, like I said, in the chat room. I'm in there right now, and you can talk to us while we are on air. I don't remember what show number this is because we just stopped counting, to be honest. Probably just laziness, I would suspect. But you can tune in to us online on your smart device directly via an app, or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop digital radio. That's what you can do. You can access the station's archives for free. That means if you've missed out on any of our shows or any other host shows on Revolution Radio, it's simple. Just go into the archives. There's a password and username presented on the screen. You type those in when prompted, and voila, you have the archives in MP3 format. Then you go back a couple of years because, space is an issue. So we have most of our undeleted archives on YouTube, and now we broadcast directly to Rumble because they don't tend to delete our videos. We also are you can find our work on YouTube, X. We can find it on Spotify even, and on Rumble. So if you find it on any platform, do like, share, subscribe, and comment to help us with the algorithm. And we really ask you to subscribe because we have 93% of the people that watch any of our videos or any of our content aren't even subscribed. So do that. Do subscribe to our material, and therefore you can be notified when we release new content. And let's see if we can do that. That'd be great. Can you help us out, please? Please help us do that. I'm broadcasting out of an area inside Australia, inside New South Wales for that matter, which is called the First Nations people were called the Darkinjung. We have billboards when you enter this piece of country, which it highlights the fact that this is Darkajung country. And Meki, if he were here, he would say he's from Daruk country. Now, I want to because in Meki's absence, I wanted to do a few things. Shout out to those in the chat room. Say hello. Tell me if the audio is good. Amiga Logos isn't there. It normally tells us immediately. And I've got some things that I've been looking at. I think I can do. I'll start with this one. And if I do that, maybe, let me have a look. If I start with this, I can select that, hit copy, go to there, go to that one, and then hit paste. Nope. It tends to hate me a lot when I try to do that. Oh, I'll turn my video off anyway. So, there's a lot of news, not in the mainstream, not even at all. No one's talking about it in the mainstream, though you would think that they would be talking about it. And here's the headline. No, that's not the headline. Here's the headline. Southern Ocean Circulation Reversed. And this is iefworld.org. Some story. It's almost... Look, it could be on a temporary website. No one's going to visit it. Here's another one. This is icm.csic.es. Once again, no one really cares. It's talking about the Southern Ocean salinity has changed. It's no longer the fresh water floating on top of the salt water. It's now predominantly salt water. And here's the quote from Antonio Turiel. Says, we are witnessing a true change in ocean properties in the Southern Hemisphere, something we've never seen before. And here's how they like to tie all this together. Climate models predict freshening of surface waters in the Southern Ocean, while we observe the opposite, an increase in salinity. And then he continues to say, while the world is debating the potential collapse of the AMOC in the North Atlantic, we're seeing the Southern Ocean is drastically changing as sea ice coverage declines and the upper ocean is becoming saltier. This could have unprecedented global impacts, says Antonio Turiel. He's the ICM-CSIC researcher and co-author of the study. And here's another story from also another place you've never heard of in your entire life, pnas.org. I'm not going to say what it sounds like, pnas.org, but it says also rising surface salinity and declining sea ice. A new Southern Ocean state revealed by satellites. This is, no one's down there, right? So they found it by satellite data. And, well, that's a bit weird. Look at that graph. I love the graph. Graphs are great. But there you go. It is what it is. And I think the data ends in 2023. It's 2 years ago. But, who cares? Do you know what? It doesn't matter. Does it really matter? Does anyone really care? They're talking about, though, in the story here, and I go back to this one, as I think that's the one. Yeah. A major reversal in ocean circulation, though. This is the Southern Ocean circulation reversed. So it says for the first time, with key climate implications using Earth observation satellites, a study led by the National Oceanographic Centre, NOC, United Kingdom, and published in PNAS, hence the source document that I found, shows that since 2016, they've kept this for 9 years. 9 years. Not time to tell people yet. Let's put it that way. Let's not I'm crinkling my nose for nothing. I'm going, Yeah, don't really tell anyone about that, you know. So, since 2016, a sustained increase in surface salinity has been detected in the region between the polar and subpolar gyres of the Antarctic Ocean. The change in water composition suggests that the deep ocean circulation in the southern hemisphere, known as the SMOC, is not only being altered but has reversed. That is, instead of sinking into the depths, surface water is being replaced by deep water masses rising to the surface, bringing with them heat and carbon dioxide. Well, that's not terrible. That had been trapped for centuries. Now we're talking. So, if you think about, just for 1 second, just think about this for a second. We all have to drive electric vehicles for some reason in a country that is most power is generated by coal and gas, very small amounts by gas and even smaller by renewables, but you know, who cares? That we should all be doing our bit to save the planet. But when you think about what the planet has as far as polluters, I think the largest single contributor might be China. So yeah, they're really not doing very much to do anything. So even if we all did our part, and I mean every single person, snap your fingers, all got EVs, and for some reason, the climate isn't getting any better. It's because we don't amount to a hill of beans in this small town. That's sad. It really is sad. But you know, I suppose ignorance is bliss. No one really cares. They held this data for 9 years, and then suddenly today, oh, guess what? It's all really bad. Yeah, okay. So why today? So Plato's Cave is predominantly a show where we discuss the implications of why. Why would they now release this data if they've been sitting on it for 9 years? Nah. Yeah. Is it? Anyone? Bueller? Why? Why would you sit on this? Why could not this have been part of everyone's discussions? Could it have been this fear factor? Could it have just been pouring water on the fire that is renewables? I don't mean that as, you know, EVs are on fire. No. I mean, could this be the water that's poured onto and extinguishing the need for us to go and do something, since it doesn't even look like we're causing most of it anyway? Just because carbon dioxide is coming up from the seafloor, it might have been there for hundreds, I don't care, it's for a million years. Who cares? It's not as bad as it really seems. When I show this carbon calculation, and I've got some more changes to go on here too, by the way, but the carbon budget itself, there's a link, and that's the link. You can pause it if you want to have a look for yourself, and then just copy that. If I'm really nice, I'll put it in the link below the videos, right? But the thing that I think is the most important of all of this is that the only thing we really need to protect ourselves from is net new carbon. Net new. That's it. So if you have a look at this column here, the emissions from coal. Oh, coal's net new. Great. Oil, net new. Gas, net new. So the land use change, that's a number which is the difference from year to year on the amount of plants that are grown and that consume carbon. So we have, in Australia, we have approximately, let's call it just 401. Yeah. And as a sink where we can capture, our country can capture 746. That's fantastic. So if we positively emit 401, but we can capture 746, we're still in the black by minus 345. That means that we could still capture more. In fact, we could double our coal use and still be net zero. I hope that makes sense to everybody. It's just the ability of our countryside to absorb the carbon that is net new carbon. That's it. You got plants that need carbon, that's great. When you burn a tree, that's not net new carbon, that's just recyclable carbon. If you were to make natural gas, which is CH4, if you were to make natural gas, because you can do it, out of the atmospheric carbon dioxide and 1 hydrogen to 4 carbons, that's what it means. So you could do this and be able to produce all your power from recyclable carbon, not net new carbon. In fact, we could turn all our coal-fired plants into gas-fired plants and run the whole thing without any net new carbon. And we'd be able to then sell our carbon credits, but no one wants a carbon economy because that's just making money out of thin air. That is, no one wants that. But anyway, so this is my point. Now they're talking about there being. I go to middle screen. There we go. I'm the producer of the show. So when you go here to the potential of an amount of carbon rising up from beneath the sea floor, then you have to consider that as net new carbon. But we've still got enough allowance or headroom, if you will, to be able to absorb that too. If we cut all carbon emissions and we put out all fires and there's no more carbon, the only carbon in the atmosphere is us breathing outwards and all the animals breathing out, then we'd see a huge plant not die off, but restrained growth of all of our plants, because they have to consume it, and they use photosynthesis to convert it into oxygen for us, but carbon for them. It strips it, you see. That's what it does. So, would we benefit by becoming completely net zero? No. So, at some point, we're going to have to start burning our own forests in order to provide carbon enough for us to eat. Because we have to grow the plants, and plants need the carbon if we stopped everything. Now you can start to see how completely stupid this whole argument is. I want people to discuss this below. I'm going to show my finger there. Chat below this video. There's going to be a reel out of this for sure. But it just annoys me. It annoys me so much that I'm entirely passionate about the science of all of this. But I want to lead us into something kind of a little bit more lightweight. And I was joking with a friend of mine, and yes, and there's many comedians that have talked about this and I'm not going to be a comedian talk about it. I'm just going to share my thoughts on it. And that is, the dark web pretty much has everyone's passwords going back as long as you can possibly imagine. They keep melding all these leaks and hacks, all the data together. The database is probably bigger than any of the databases that ever stolen from. All our accounts and all our data. They probably don't know more than my government knows about me, or you, for that matter. And we were making the joke that if the dark web, if it had an AI front end that you had to confirm your details with in order to get access to the dark web to recover a password that it has that's of yours because you forgot one. It's like, what was my bank password? I've forgotten. Rather than embarrass myself and ring up the bank and have to change it, because I did like it, I just can't remember what it was, that you could go to an AI interface, you could type in your creds, and which it already has anyway, and then you could say, oh, I'm looking for the password for this website. It goes, oh, here it is, and just provides it to you. That'd be awesome. That would be so good. Surely someone's got to think of that. Surely. That's got... I'll give it a minute, and I bet it's available. Right? That's how soon I think they could probably do it. Get AI to create the interface, and then just publicize the link. There's no sense in deleting it. Geez, it's probably it's gonna be the cheapest offsite backup you've ever had. Because, storage costs money, right? Sure, someone else is paying for it. I like that. OPM, other people's money. That's the best. So let's start with this one. If you and I have seen any AI produced video and audio in combination in a video, let's call it AI generated videos. Well, YouTube's decided to, how can YouTube be YouTube, and tube as in television, like your television, you television. How can it be you television if there's no people involved at all? So what they've done, starting, I suppose, today, US time, good morning to everyone in the US, have a cup of coffee for me. And if you're really game, don't have percolated coffee. Oh, don't do that. Why don't you have some espresso? Get a barista to make you a nice coffee. And I don't mean one that's got, 3,000 teaspoons of sugar or sweetener of some kind in it. Forget it. Come on, be real. Be real to yourself. All that Starbucks rubbish. They're going to hate me for this, but all that Starbucks, flavors. Why? It's coffee. Why don't you just have, imagine if whatever you order from Starbucks, if you just remove the coffee from it and then see if you like it. Whatever's left with all your flavors. Give that a go for a day and comment below and tell me if you liked it or you didn't like it or you thought it was repulsive or, I'm going to do that again. Whatever. I don't really care. But do that because I have a barista-made coffee. In the morning I make myself, I think it's a quadruple shot coffee just to wake up. Just to be able to get dressed and go to work. And I can say go to work now. It's a lot of fun. That's a hard slog what I'm doing these days, but that doesn't matter. Look, it's paying the bills, and that's the most important thing at this time in my life. So YouTube has decided to demonetize. They're going to let them continue to post these useless, stupid videos of things that are hopelessly unrealistic. Like, I've watched one today. I watched it a few times to try and count how many things were wrong with it. There was I'm not even going to play it. I don't want to entertain anyone with how poor this thing was. But it was a video where there was kind of like a wave outside the building for some reason, where there wasn't even an ocean or a pool. It was like the wave was crashing into the courtyard where this glass door, beautiful architectured glass door, it was all dark, led into this courtyard. You could see the wave coming over the top of the house without damaging the house at all. Not even at all. So a 1 meter, let's call it 1 yard by 1 yard by 1 yard for the US, my US friends. So that's roughly a 1 meter cube. Do you know how much that weighs? It weighs 1 ton. So this thing was huge. This wave was like 3 stories tall. And when it crashed, it only left like 1 foot of water. But there was 3 people in a room, one left by the right rear of the camera, being the fourth wall. It walked kind of just by us. The other one decided to start running and went up the stairs. Didn't splash, no splashes with the feet. And the other person just remained frozen in place. And their clothes didn't react, didn't get wet. They didn't make any splashes. The only thing that was really alive in the shot was the water. Now, it's unrealistic because the glass would have broken. The building would have been damaged. The people would have gotten wet. And they would have watched the water. But they didn't. The person running didn't see the water coming. Didn't hear the water coming. And the person who had already left the room was being witnessed by the person running. So that's it. It's like when you watch them clean the barnacles off some killer whale or something, and the barnacles look like they're getting pressure washed off or soap washed, which is probably really bad, soap washed off the killer whale. And as they are cleaning the whale, the mollusks or whatever the hell they are, mussels or creatures of some kind, as they come off the whale and onto the deck of the boat, they don't remain in place. As like it, if I counted 30 of these mussels or whatever you call them, like barnacles on the side of this whale, when they come down, there's only 2 or 3 still there. It doesn't equate to 1 to 1. Like everyone that's released there's no, do you know what I mean? Like it's a charming video if you're an idiot. Oh, look at that, they're cleaning the whale. How lovely is that? Or when I think the cheetah is caught up in the fence or something, or a mountain lion, I don't know what it is. Who cares? Because it's not real. So someone starts to bandage it, but then between shots, the bandages are different. And between shots, the spots move around on the creature, but it's all meant to be. You can see they're using a free one or whatever. It's only 5-second long clips, and they join them all together. And there's no relative consistency or what's called continuity in the industry. No continuity between shots. So it's just awful. It's so like it. Yeah, sure, it's young, early days. Grok 4 has just been released, and with Grok 4, they're talking about next year, maybe this time next year, there'll be a full-length 90-minute AI film, all contextually correct, which I doubt. It could be longer than that, but they're sprouting all these wonderful figures, and it annoys me because we're not there yet. Old people, mind you, really old people, are like, oh, Putin backflipped. No, he didn't. Granddad or grandma or whoever you're referring to, even dad or mum, depending on your age. No, it's not real. But it looks like him. But it's him, isn't it? No, it's not. It's not him. It's fake. So not a deep fake where you're pretending to be someone, just the AI is just making it all together using their likeness. And if it's good enough, it can sound like them, but it rarely does all the things at once. It's getting good, sure. But for those of us, let's say, that have grown up in IT, with IT, following the cutting edge of the AI blade, you can see all the faults. All the faults are completely immediate. If it was let's say a news media outlet, let's pretend one of those outlets decided to prank everyone, an April Fool's joke or something similar. And they made a video to prank everyone, and it was all made by AI and looked, for all intents and purposes, absolutely real. Would there be anyone watching it who would doubt what they saw? Because it's a major news network. I don't mean photoshopped or airbrushed or anything, all the things that they used to do in the past. I'm not talking H.G. Wells or Orson Welles. H.G. Wells? You know, they're coming from Mars, they're here, they're opening up the thing and doing a radio play on it and scaring everyone, because that was how the media was being portrayed back then. That's how it was delivered. Today, completely different. Everyone has access to media, and less, to be honest, less and less of the actual internet. The only thing we're using it for now is, say, let's call it the majority of stuff we access, social media. By far. By a long shot. Like if it was a horse race, the horses finished the race already and the other ones still haven't come out of the barrier. That's how far ahead the usage of social media is to all the other content on the internet. It's insane. When before Facebook, and no one can remember the time when they were, it was impossible to imagine that Facebook could even exist, because we had back then, the wonders of MySpace. I just vomited a little bit back in my throat. I had a MySpace page because that's all there was. That was the most social thing that anyone could ever have, because you're kind of putting yourself out there, probably to your own detriment, but that's the way it was. And then Facebook came along. Wow, that was loud. When Facebook came along, it was kind of like, what do we do now? That's happened. Well, let's keep seeing what we can do with it and what it does. And now businesses have their page on Facebook and not have their own website. I mean, Meki and I have a website for Shiny Out, little cross promotion there, shameless one at that. And a lot of large companies who are still dragging their legacy chains still have websites. But for the most part, I don't think there's a child today that will grow up to use the internet the way it used to be. I really don't think that's what's going to happen. Sure, Temu and Alibaba and eBay and all those things will exist, and they're outside of social media. I get it. But as far as registering a website and doing all of those things, where if it was Zuckerberg's dream, if anything, it would have been that no other internet exists. It's only his Facebook, and voila, we're all using it, and there is nothing else. Kind of like, Weibo, I think. In China, I think they've just released in Australia, there's a connection here to CDBCs in Australia, and that they're currently trialing this, and there's some people who have already made videos about it. I think the announcement came out a day or two ago, or last week or something. So, money that has an expiration date, access to the money that's controllable by the government, a global identity. So, like for us, a national Australian, it's called MyGov, or it's now called MyID, so that they know who made the post online and prove who you are. Social credit, that means you've got to be a happy little Vegemite and obey the government's orders. You can't go against the narrative. And now they're passing laws that will fit into the social credit score of you, where if you were to say a certain set of words, then that would go against your social credit, and reducing that to zero could mean that you don't get access to money or food or housing or whatever it happens to be. That's a suppose that's going to happen. But the thin edge of the wedge has already been done. The thin edge of the wedge in all of our banks in Australia. We've now got new end user agreements where the terms and conditions have now changed on every bank in Australia that services Australian people. And they're talking about the changes that they say are in there, because they must say, this is the kind of changes that you're agreeing to, because it's too much to read. And I don't think there's a legal person on the planet that would enjoy reading the terms and conditions from the banks, but it was around transferring of digital money and what that would then, how that would be turned on and off. And so all of the things seem to be put into place right now for that. But I wanted to move on because, it's 9:37 or 7:37 a.m. Eastern in the US. And good morning to you. Housing fail, tax hikes urged in leaked Treasury advice. So you know what a leak is in government. It's not an accidental one. It's not a criminal leak. The leaks are there intentionally because a leak will push another story out. And even with the power of the internet, where every single story you could ever imagine could be there, you're only going to read 5. The news only reads 5. They've even got sport and like a goodwill story at the end and some weather. They've got no time to delve deeply into any story apart from a headline and the secondary, the two paragraphs that follow it. So our government, who's just been voted back in for some reason, who had promised housing, and originally it was for women and children in messy divorces. It's meant to be government housing. It was really never slated to be for the poor, because the people who live in a suburb that is now going to have called community housing in it don't want to live next to community housing. And so to have the human experience, I suppose, of, the, what do we call it during the week? Or social something or other. It's an emotional connection to news. And by slating it as, or, naming it as the housing for the people who have been downtrodden and abused, and it's no intention of their own. They just want to be good. Well, they promised buying all these houses and setting apart these houses as community housing, like cheap rents, right? But they didn't build any new housing. There's really not very much land available, certainly in Sydney, to do it. And the plan of our government federally is to release the land and sell it to a developer, because they're really good at building. And what they're going to do, you see, they're going to build these houses for the desperate and poor. No, they won't, because they try to maximize their profit so much that they build roads so narrow you can't park it like one car on the road because the other car can't get past. They build housing blocks so small. And in Australia, it used to be a 1/4 acre block. It used to be, a long time ago, like 1,400 meters, all right, square meters. But now you'd be lucky to get 400 square meters, which is a 20 by 20 meter or 20 by 20 yard block of land. And if you open the back door of the house, it just clunks into the fence. And that's why a lot of housing, and they're 2-story, and they don't even have eaves overhanging the roof. Like the roof doesn't overhang the side walls of the house. It just comes to the edge, like you've built it out of Lego, right? And there's no shade from, there used to be shade from the eaves, that's what it's called. The shade from those overhangs over the walls would shade the wall from the sun, and our sun is brutal, to be honest with you. So all of that is gone. And then the houses had a 1 meter restraint before the side fence, and the side fence is like 7 foot tall. So you'd be in a box. However, then they reduced that down and said, well, it's really just, we don't want the roofs touching. So by deleting the overhang, now they can stuff these houses right next to the fence line, and you really can't get a wheelbarrow down the side of the houses now. Such a shame. We're no longer designing houses for our climate. What we're doing is designing them to make more money. It's the same as a car park where you can't park an F-250 in it any longer, and you can only get, say, a small compact in. But they did that so they could get an extra 5 cars in the row by shrinking all of the, let's say, instead of having a nice wide spot where you can open your door and you won't exceed the lines, even with the door open, now there's a shared space between the 2 cars, and you're opening the door and it's exceeding your line that you're meant to park within, and it's now encroaching on the vehicle, that space between their vehicle and the line. It's terrible. So they're doing that with houses. They do it with everything, just trying to make a profit. Oh, let's get 3 more car spaces in this row here, shrink all the spots down. You can't really tell. You can barely get out of the car, even with the door open, if there's another car there, because you can't touch the other car with your door because you'll damage your paint and theirs, and then that's bad. So you try and open the door, but then you've got to kind of awkwardly squeeze yourself out of the space with your fingers between your door and their car. It's insane. Now they're doing it with housing blocks, and now they're going up. So you've got 2-story houses, and they're just looking at each other. There's not even any trees in these housing developments. So the government was supposed to build all these houses, has passed it on to the developers, and they're going, well, no, we're just in it for the profit. Good luck with that. So the government bought, I think, 5 houses. They bought 5 old houses and just, you're going to flip a house, so you modernize it and you flip it. I don't do that because I haven't got any money. But the people who do that, flipping houses, you'll understand, they renovate it. So all they did was renovate the house to be livable, and that was it. And then there was an inquiry. So what did you do as a government? Oh, we're doing this affordable housing thing, for the downtrodden. Really, are you? So how many did you buy? Oh, and that was all a bunch of side-eye between all the people trying to answer the question without answering it. Well, you see, there was... No, so how many did you buy? None. Right. So a yes or no answers only, just like you see in Senate inquiries in the US. So what have you done? Oh, we bought 5 houses. So you didn't build them? No, we didn't build them. We fitted them out, see. And that's it, just 5. With the billions of dollars they set aside for this project, they've only bought 5 houses. Look, I know the Sydney market is very expensive, but it's not that expensive. They could have done a much better job. In fact, they've got their own crown land that they could have just given themselves and then built houses. Easy, they could have built a whole suburb. But if you build the irony here is that if you do that, you're actually going to destroy the property prices of everything else around it, and no one wants to live next to it. That's the irony. So the promise was ridiculous. They used to have all these beautiful old blocks smattered around Sydney, apartment blocks, but they were really old. They were like post-World War II built, and they had cheap rents and people living in them for the rest of their lives. You would never move out. If you ever got in the queue and you were given one of these places on really low rent, then you would never move out. You just stay there for the rest of your life. All fine. Everyone else, no one else would move out. So you're in a mini community inside an apartment block. Then they sold them all. The government sold them, not the same government, different government, but they sold them all because, hey, there's money in that. These are all in prime locations. So the lobbyist developers approached the government and said, hey, you know what? You've got all these places around. You want to make some money? We'll buy them. And we won't tell you how much they're really worth, but we'll buy them for a price that is, we can flip it. It'll be all right for us. We'll do that. And they did, and they made a fortune when the government didn't really need to get rid of them off the books. So look, it's just worse and worse, and we have immigration, which is we've already got a housing deficit. I think it's 299,000 homes that we need to have already, but we don't have. And there's more people coming here than even the current housing debt. They're trying to encourage people to live together. So shared housing, they're trying to create shared housing, but that doesn't go very well. And COVID really destroyed that because people didn't want to be cooped up in a house with their flatmates. So they decided to, kind of move out and go out on their own. As a society, we've also diminished our want to have multiple generation housing in the same house, therefore exasperating the issue with our housing crisis. We can't house the people we have. So if we had multi-generational housing, you buy a house and your family lives in it for the rest of its life. Everyone lives in it. It does require a slightly larger house, but then you've got that education of a family unit, plus it's like a community raises children. And I think people become more balanced when you have that environment rather than just living with children, living with parents who are just out to try and make the money they can just to survive or get ahead, even worse. So if you're perpetually trying to get ahead, you've got less and less time for the children. And what are they doing? Today they're just on devices. Yesteryear, they'd be watching television. And prior to that, they'd be out playing. Oh my goodness. And you can't have that either. So it's 7:48 Eastern time. Good morning to you, I'm going to say again. And this issue that we're now seeing, we've seen it across Europe en masse with all the countries that accepted everybody during the COVID issue. And it wasn't because of COVID, but that was the time where everyone was accepting it. Spain has just erupted in violence, and there was an elderly man that was brutally bashed, and there's trouble there. Their media is pointing at the migration issue, where this is really touchy subjects, and I don't want to get this wrong at all. What I'd like to say is assimilation, not Borg assimilation. Resistance is futile. But if you go to a country, you should fit into the country or leave. It's controversial, I know. That's what people are saying today. I'm not really saying it. I'm not trying to say it. I just think that the more of the minority groups that you have in your country, because they've all migrated from places around the planet, which is fantastic. I don't mind. Multi-origin is fantastic. Multicultural is going to end in problems at some point. So multicultural means that they bring their culture with them, they perpetuate it, and their tie to their homeland is so strong that they don't assimilate into the country. In Australia, we had post-World War II, Italians and Greeks come here en masse post-World War II. Eventually, it took 2 generations. Eventually, was assimilated and became Australian, considered themselves Australian. I wonder how many, this is a good question to ask, I wonder how many, wherever you live, have, after 2 generations, become your country's people, or if they still hold true their origin country. If we all go to Mars, are we all going to think about our origin country or the Earth? I remember kids that I grew up with who had to go out with chaperones because that was the way it was done at the stopped in time belief that was perpetuated by the immigrants that came to Australia, who had thought that this was still the case back in their home country. However, all the countries in the Western world were all changing or evolving at the same rate and had the same beliefs as so did here, which was, oh, there's no need for a chaperone. That was, 40 years ago. So let's forget it. Don't need it. Go and have fun. Whereas the people from the migrant kids, had to have an older cousin or brother or someone, or sister, whoever it was, to go out with their younger siblings to ensure, nothing bad came about. But nothing bad came about of it. Just saying, the belief was then abruptly returned when they decided to go and take their kids back to their homeland for a visit to the relatives, only to discover that it was just the same as Australia was. The freedoms that Australian kids enjoyed, their kids were restricted to enjoy because they'd held this belief that whatever they left, that was frozen in time, those beliefs and actions. So, look, it's it's that I don't want a world where we are all in against each other, where minorities grow and take over a country. I don't want to see that. I wish everyone would just go, you know what, I accept that I'm now living in Borneo. I'm going to do what the Borneo people do, and I've left my country to come here. So I should think a certain way, a new way of life. That's what I was seeking when I came here. And I don't know. It's a troubling topic to talk about, and I have no answers. But once again, if you think you do, pop them down below. Don't be rude, though, in any comment, because that's not what we ask here. And I'm not inciting anything here. Put my little warning screen up. I just wonder about the trends. What does it mean in the future? That's what it means. Now, this story only... Oh, that's a really old story. How's that still there? What's this one? Oh, yeah, this was yesterday. So, US politics. I'll end the show with this. US politics live. Jeffrey Epstein questions remain unanswered as Donald Trump tries to move on. We saw that story a few days ago. Trump's going, why is everyone still talking about Epstein? The main point here is not Trump. It's the message. He promised to release all these things, UFO files, JFK, COVID, blah. There's a long list. Epstein list was one. We've just basically turned the Jeffrey Epstein list into the JFK assassination. Remember the court case? Oh, the magic bullet's the only solution. It appears now as though that was the CIA that did it. So, did they coerce the entire narrative around the JFK killing to exonerate themselves or delete themselves from the story? I'm only asking the question. In the same vein, is Trump or the FBI or the CIA currently keeping everyone wrapped up and hidden away, never to be talked about ever again, because they'd been to the island? Who has the tapes? Not the Epstein client list. I think the Epstein client list as a term is fictitious. I don't believe there's a client list. I mean, client says services. Was it the other way round? Was Epstein gathering material in order to own more rich and famous and influential politicians, etc.? Was that what the whole thing was about? Was he working with Mossad, Ghislaine Maxwell? I don't know any of these, and I don't know if anything's going to ever be answered. I would hope that there'd be answers coming forthwith, but maybe it has to take another president and another 70 years for us to find out what the truth was. We know the truth has just come and gone. We haven't even heard much about Trump's attempted assassin, that kid, and any connections there might be with money. But, well, that doesn't matter anymore, does it? I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'll have had the blue pill and I won't remember anything and everything's going to be just fine. I know it. You do the same thing. This has been Dave, that's me, with Platos Cave on Revolution Radio. Keep your eye out for the shorts. Something's coming up on Rev Radio. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as we always ask, be safe.